For more on the World Cup of Rugby, let's bring in Peter Baggetta. Peter is the rugby head coach at Gonzaga College High School. He's a former professional international rugby player and also coached Guam's national team. That is impressive, Peter.
Thank you.
Very impressive indeed. So let's talk about this Rugby World Cup. I think at the end of the day, it's about the games and the athletes. So starting from the games itself, what are you looking for this World Cup?
Well, I think so. Everybody's talking about this is the 9th World Cup that we've had since the first one, which was in 1987 in New Zealand, and people are saying that this is going to be the most competitive World Cup that we've had. There are a number of countries that could possibly win it, so I think that's generated a lot of excitement about people because in the past there were maybe one or two countries that were like clear-cut favorites. New Zealand is still the favorite, but there's a number of countries that are right behind New Zealand that could actually win the World Cup this time.
Who are the favorites?
So South Africa, and New Zealand has to play South Africa tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Because the pool seedings get based on where they were 2 years ago. And in the last 2 years, South Africa has really grown, and they've won the World Cup twice now. And Nelson Mandela used the Rugby World Cup in 1995 in South Africa to unite South Africa. England, the most well-resourced country when it comes to rugby. They have a coach who's an Australian, Eddie Jones. Eddie is quite interesting character, and he talks a lot about what England's going to do. Wales has had a great run up to the World Cup. There's Australia, which is a possibility, and then Ireland up until last year were probably the other favorites because last year, for the first time, they beat New Zealand last year. They've had a little bit of a dip in form, but you've got about 6 countries that can possibly win the World Cup, so that makes it really exciting.
Well, Peter, here we can talk about the odds-on favorites. It sounds like the field or the crowded field of soccer, football. But do you think rugby is still largely a Commonwealth sport, given the names you've mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And this is one of the reasons why, part of the reasons why the World Rugby wants to have Japan host the World Cup, because they're really trying to market rugby into Asia, right? And especially 2 big markets, China and India, right? As with everything else. And so I was just in Indonesia, Indonesia this past summer, and I was at a Asian Rugby Championship tournament in Indonesia. And there's a lot more people playing rugby in Asia, particularly women. And so this is really big in terms of World Rugby trying to grow the sport outside of the typical Commonwealth countries.
But do you think the rugby associations, the rugby teams will succeed in tapping into the Asian market, given the fact that if you look at the Chinese market, the Indian market, they look pretty saturated for cricket and soccer? Yeah,
I think as with all sports right now, right, it's a fight for entertainment dollars. And so one of the ways that rugby has tried to get in is through a shorter and quicker version of rugby called Rugby Sevens. And in Hong Kong, it's been tremendously popular. The Hong Kong Sevens is people come from all around the world and people get excited about it. So they try to use that as a game that's fast flowing. So it's similar to what cricket did with when they went to one-day cricket.
Yeah.
Right, and get people, because people don't want to sit around and watch long games, but playing 14-minute games where there's a lot of action and it happens really fast is a way to kind of attract people to the game.
So talk to us about the commercial side of the game. How much money is really involved here in this World Cup?
So of course, nothing compared to FIFA's dollars.
Yeah.
World Rugby, the Rugby World Cup is the biggest fund generator for World Rugby. World Rugby will generate about $450 million, and then they will take the profits from that $450 million after they parse out what it costs them to hold the event, but they use that money to create development in countries. So they would invest some of that money in places like China and India with more coaching, getting referees trained. So that's what they use that money for. So World Rugby stands to make money from the World Cup. And then you have Japan itself, which is expected to make about over 400 billion yen, with probably an increase of about close to 200 billion yen in GDP. And that's because they estimate 400,000 foreign visitors and the foreign visitors spend about 14 days in Japan. That's a lot of time to spend in Japan. And you brought up one of the concerns is about accommodations. Are there going to be enough quality accommodations for the foreigners going over to Japan?
All right, Peter Baggetta, I'm afraid that's all the time we have, but thank you so much for coming in.
All right, thank you so much.